So welcome and thank you for joining us today. I'm Helmick-Lyon and will be serving as moderator for today's event. Today we're talking about one of my favorite subjects and parts of being a member of Impact Austen, and that's grants. My notes here have like about 15 exclamation points behind it because it's an awesome area to talk about. Our event will include a panel of Impact Austen members sharing their experiences with our grant review process and how you can get involved. It's been an unusual year, to say the least. So Becky Austen will also provide an update on grant making changes for the coming year. Housekeeping. Please make sure you submit your questions in the Q&A on Zoom webinar or through the Facebook Live chat, and we'll address it at the end of the panel. So quick introduction about Impact Austen, if you're new to us. We're a women's collective giving organization in Central Texas. We were founded in 2003, and since that time have given over $7 million, that's $7 million, in grants to hardworking and deserving nonprofits. That's a pretty amazing contribution. To share a little bit more about me, I joined in 2017. After sitting there during many Decembers, writing checks to the pile of envelopes that had accumulated to the various nonprofits we chose to donate to. And I wondered about the money I was giving, and was it going to the right place? And was it really making a difference? Was it having an impact? So I did some research and I found Impact Austen, went to a meeting, and the rest is history. I was also looking for like-minded women who wanted to meet other women who had a curiosity and passion around philanthropic giving. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience. Grant making is core to Impact Austen, but many of you as new or longtime members or even new prospects may have questions about our grant making process and how you can get involved. Our panelists will speak more about their experience with the grant review committees and other volunteering within the grants committee. And as a result of the pandemic, Impact Austen has made several changes in our grant making process. We've evolved as the needs of our community has evolved, and I'm proud of the efforts of everyone. Before I introduce our panelists though, I've asked Becky Austen, Impact Austen Chair of Grantmaking and Strategic Partnerships, to share an update on Impact Austen grant making for the coming year. Thanks for joining us today, Becky, and I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thanks so much, Anne, and hello, everybody. I've been a member of Impact Austen for over 10 years. When I first joined, I thought that everybody was supposed to join a grant review committee. I didn't realize it was even a choice. And so I literally joined in December, and a couple of weeks later showed up at my first GRC, fell in love with grant making, and have been involved deeply with the grants team ever since. So delighted to be here today. If you're a new member, some of the things I'm talking about may not be as relevant to you just because you're thinking, well, what's changing? I didn't know how Impact Austen did grants before. If you're recent or a longer term member, you'll understand that these changes are fairly significant over some of the things that we had done in the past. Anne did say that certainly the pandemic played a role in how we had to reimagine some of our grant making. Starting in the spring, we were mid-grant cycle and had to literally change some things on the fly in order to shift to a virtual format and think about ways to get more money to more partners in the community as quickly as possible, while still honoring our really rigorous grant making processes. But it wasn't just the pandemic. There's a lot going on in the world right now. And so, other forces and thinking around social justice and equity and around just things happening here in the Austen community, gave us pause and really had us rethink what grants should look like in the coming year. So one of the things you'll see is that we're now moving to a balanced spring and fall cycle. We used to have the majority of the grants in the spring, and then we had launched a pilot for our social innovation grant in the fall. We're now going to have 2 grant categories per season, so 2 in the spring and 2 in the fall. We used to have separate grants for programs and capacity building. The capacity we called the Catalyst Grant, and then we had program grants. What we've heard from nonprofits and from members of the community is organizations need both. You can't make programs great without having a strong infrastructure, and you can't just invest in the infrastructure and the capacity without having an effect on the programs that you deliver. So we have decided to blend programs and capacity building into a single application, and the nonprofit can make that choice as to where they want to apply the budget if they earn that grant. So they can decide to go all in on programs, all in on capacity building, or some combination. Another thing we learned through that social innovation grant was the power of collaboratives showing up to work together on a project. That grant actually required that folks come as a collaborative, and we determined that why just reserve that for one part of our grant portfolio? Why not do that everywhere? These partnerships have been really powerful. The organizations are doing more together than they could each do on their own. And so again, nonprofits can choose to show up as a group and divide up the grant proceeds among them towards an initiative, or show up on their own. Another thing we did this spring, and again, the goal was to get the most funds we could into the community as quickly as possible and to more partners, is that we split up our funds and awarded both of our finalists rather than just the one with the most votes. That resonated so strongly with members and with the nonprofits that we've decided to make that a standard for our 2021 grants. So anyone, or either a single organization or collaborative, that basically makes it to the stage or is pitching as a finalist, will become a community partner of Impact Austen. The one with the most votes will get 80% of the grant pool for that focus area, and then the other one will get 20%. And that primary grant will be for the initiative that was proposed. The secondary grant will be unrestricted funds. So considerably more organizations will be touched by Impact Austen, and with greater flexibility. We also learned that because we had so many different grant making categories and focus areas and processes, it was challenging for us to manage as a group of volunteers. It was challenging for nonprofits to figure out, which one am I applying for? What does it look like? So we've actually streamlined our grant process. So we now have a single application. It's much shorter. So instead of a couple of dozen or more questions, we have about a half a dozen, and it's just really basic. Who are you? What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? How are you going to measure it? What's the impact? And just how are you showing up? So modified the grant application, have modified corresponding processes to lighten that load. We trust our members and we trust the nonprofits to know what to do and to do it right. So we don't have to do quite so much questioning and monitoring and inspecting. Finally, again, with forces in the world and always with a culture in our organization of humility and community awareness and connection to the community, we realized that we still have a lot of work to do around equity in our grant making processes. And so we've introduced an equity prompt in the application. We're training our members more universally around racism and anti-racism and around equity and bias. And really just starting to infuse that in our processes, again, with the humility that we won't fix this in one grant cycle or in 1 year, but it's part of a journey that Impact Austen members are on. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see this is a summary of all of the grants that we plan to issue in 2021. We've actually already kicked off our Girls Giving Grants program for young women in 8th to 12th grade. So that's underway and will be awarded in the spring. And then you see here, our spring cycle will have the education and community focus areas, and the fall cycle will have health and well-being and the equity grant. And again, all will support either programs or capacity building, single orgs or collaboratives, with the same applications, the same criteria, and the same processes. You can learn a lot more about the details of the grant programs, the calendar, and all of that on our grant making site, and also on the GRC site, where we talk about the experience of being a grant review committee member, what that looks like, and what to expect. So you may be thinking, this sounds amazing, and everyone here seems so excited about being involved in grants. How do I get involved? Just like I did when I first joined, I didn't question it. I just joined a GRC because I thought that's what Impact Austen does. And we encourage all of our members to do that. It's an incredible way to learn about the community, to learn about grant making, to meet other women who have passion and curiosity and incredible skills and expertise to bring to the table. So you're going to be, making friends with these folks and working side by side with them. There's just so many benefits. It's a well-structured process. It's run by volunteers. They're going to train you and tell you everything you need to know. So even if you're thinking, oh, I've never done that before, it's really easy to jump right in. So that's, step number one, especially for new members. Go ahead and join a spring or fall committee and get that experience. The grants committee is the volunteer team, myself and others who do the work of grant making with Impact Austen. You see a little org chart here that's really simplistic, but these are the different roles on the grants committee. All of us have grown up through grants, some of us, with one GRC under our belt and others with 10 years or more. So again, depending on the role, you could jump right in, or we may say, hey, shadow in that role. And then as you get that experience shadowing a peer, then you can step into that role yourself. But we have folks that work directly with the nonprofits, either during the application cycle or at the other end when they become community partners. We have members who work directly with our grant review committees and lead those teams and train and guide our members through that process. We have folks that do deep dives on the financials. So if you love money or numbers, that's a great place to land. And then we have folks that also help shepherd our finalist process and our technology. So lots and lots of opportunities to come in, and we invite people to shadow virtually every role if they want to learn what goes on there. Lastly, if you have an appetite for other types of volunteering, either instead of grants or in addition to grants, we have lots and lots of places to land in marketing and membership and volunteer management and so on. Christina will cover that a bit more at the end. But what I'd really like to do now is turn it back to Ann and the panel. You're going to hear from folks who've actually sat in these roles and done the work. So thank you.
Thanks, Becky. I do feel truly honored to be among such extraordinary women. So for panelists, I'd like you each to take a moment to introduce yourself, when you were a member of Impact Austen, and whatever you'd like to share about yourself personally and or professionally. And I feel like having you guys do it individually is better than anything I could say. I'd also like you to briefly share what it was about Impact Austen grant making that drew you in as a member. So Rachel, let's start with you. And again, introduce yourself, when you were a member, whatever you'd like to share personally, and what it is about Impact Austen grant making that drew you in as a member.
My name is Rachel Brownlow Lund. I have been a member since 2017 and have had the pleasure of serving on several different grant review committees. The community one, health and well-being, family, with several of the women on this call today, including you, Ann, and have met some really fabulous people on the community, or within the grant review committee. The other question was, oh, what drew us in? What drew us in? I was really drawn to Impact Austen because I had this heart to give, but I couldn't give $500,000 by myself, right? And, you know, together as a collective, we are able to do that each year. We all pool our money together and we're able to really make a sizable impact within the community.
Thanks, Rachel. That was wonderful. So Deirdre, you're up next. If you'd introduce yourself, when you were a member, some things you'd like to share about yourself personally, and also talk a little bit about your organization's mission.
Okay. Well, my name is Deidre Anderson, and I've been a member for 2 years. And one of the reasons I am a community grantee, or community partner with Impact Austen. My organization, Jeremiah Program, was awarded a grant. And as part of being a grantee, we were allotted one membership for Impact Austen. And so I joined, and with the caveat that I would serve on a grants review committee. And I was super excited to be able to do that because, of course, I've been on the other side applying for grants and really wanted to learn more about the process. And just to tell you, for those of you who don't know about Jeremiah Program, our mission is to break the cycle of poverty 2 generations at a time for single mothers and their children. So I served on the community and the health and well-being committee for the last 2 years, and really kind of learned how the process was just very organized, very robust, I would say. And really you get an opportunity to meet and get to know more about the members of Impact Austen really kind of through that process. So it wasn't just learning more about the organizations in the community that are worthy and doing wonderful work, but also really an opportunity to get to know the Impact Austen members on a more personal level, which was really a great opportunity, I think.
Thanks,
Did I answer all your questions?
You did great. Yes, you're awesome. So Simone, you're up next. And if you'd again introduce yourself, when you were a member, some things about you personally, tell us a little bit about your organization's mission and what it was about Impact Austen grant making that drew you in.
It's so wonderful to be here this afternoon. I'm Simone Talma Flowers, and I became a member in 2018. And that's because the organization I work for, where I serve as the executive director, Interfaith Action of Central Texas, became a community partner in 2017. Our work, our mission is to cultivate peace and respect through interfaith dialogue, service, and celebration. And the grant that we received was for mentoring refugee youth so that they can stay in school so that we can have like a higher graduation rate for refugee teenagers. So we are just really excited to be a part of Impact Austin. And for me, being a part of the grant committee was just being on the other side, right? I think one thing about Impact Austin is that you have all these women, and I work in the nonprofit sector, so I get to meet a lot of people. And I tell you what, when I came into Impact Austin, I didn't know, like, I would say 80% of the people. So it's just that opportunity to get to work alongside people that you don't know. So, and that has been a great value for me.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Simone. And Melissa, last but not least, share us the same information about you.
Sure. My name is Melissa Lorber, and I have been a member since 2014. And as Becky said earlier, I immediately joined a grant review committee because why not? This is what Impact Austin's about. It's about deciding how the collective money is going to be spent and making informed decisions. And I wanted to be a part of that. And I have been in grants every year since then. I think I spent 2 years on a grant review committee, 2 years chairing a committee, 1 year as an advisor. And then the last 3 years, I've been sort of in the behind the scenes roles as grant review coordinator or nonprofit coordinator. Because as Becky mentioned earlier, Impact Austin is almost virtually volunteer run. So all of these grant review committees, from the ground up are being run by volunteers. And I have enjoyed every bit of it. I've enjoyed it for getting to know the community. I've enjoyed it for getting to know the people. And I'm hooked. One of the reasons I wanted to be involved, so I'm a lawyer by day and a mom by day and night, and didn't have a lot of time to volunteer, which is how I had always wanted to make a difference in the community. And so this organization has let me make a difference in the community monetarily in ways that I hadn't understood until I got involved. And so I've learned so much. It's been great.
Thanks, Melissa. Thanks, all four of you. I mean, we could stop here. The information is so authentic and so sincere, but I've got a list of questions I want to work through. So the GRC is where members do the hands-on work of grant making, facilitated by peer volunteers. All members may serve on the GRC, and members describe it as a great way to learn about the needs of the community, how nonprofits are serving those needs, and how to assess and recommend grants alongside other bright and passionate women. Becky talked about it earlier, but I've heard it often. Sometimes members wonder if they have the right skills or experiences to review grants. What do I know about a nonprofit? I don't work for one. How could I possibly make good decisions? But we teach you everything you need to know, and we partner you with people with a lot of experience who help you along the way. So Rachel, I'm coming back to you. What was your GRC experience like? What did you learn, and how did that shape your perspective, most importantly, on our community?
My grant review committee experience, I have to say it out, spell it out, but it was really eye-opening. I was born in Austin and have lived here for most of my life, but I came into Impact Austin not knowing about all of the different nonprofits, and there's still so many that I have no idea are even out there. Just the scope it's amazing. I came in knowing more about the large nonprofits that pretty much everyone hears about, and maybe some of the smaller ones that I had personal ties to, either giving or volunteering my time. But joining a grant review committee, again, it was really eye-opening. It showed me the different challenges that our community faces and who in the game and who out there is really working to help create a better Austin and a better Central Texas. So that's one other point that I just want to throw in there too. Impact Austin isn't just about Austin. We look at grants throughout Central Texas, and I think that was really big for me as well.
Thanks, Rachel. I agree, totally agree. One benefit of being a community partner that's an Impact Austin grant recipient that the organization can choose a member on its staff to be a member, like was mentioned earlier. That staff member is invited to participate on a GRC or other Impact Austin committees. Simone, talk what it's like to sit on both sides of the table as a community partner and as a GRC member. What new insight has that brought you as a nonprofit leader?
Oh my, wow. It has been such a great experience. So first of all, I have to say that our organization was applied for Impact Austin for 9 years. And then we finally got it in 2017. And what is so marvelous about Impact Austin is that you do it the LOI. So you get to know early on if you're going to move on to the next stage, right? So we became a finalist in 2017, and that process was so thorough, it was rigorous, and it allowed our entire organization, from the board and all the staff, to be engaged in the application. And it brought us so much closer and so much more invested in the organization. And even going through the interviews and the prep work, all that was so enriching to the organization and for me personally. So when we got the grant, I mean, it was like, oh my gosh, it is like awesome. You know, I felt as though, yes, we have arrived as an organization. And then, okay, so I started, I became a member that year. I was like, okay, I want to be in this community where it's about learning, it's about improving myself, and improving the community, and seeing how my dollars can also stretch, and that collective giving really be impactful in the community. So when I got onto the grants committee, it was like, okay, being on the other side, and I'm seeing how democratic the process is, how focused we are. So, and then they train you, they tell you everything that you need to know and what to look for. So it was, you know, I'm just coming in on a different lens. And what really surprised me is the details. You know, when you're in such a competitive process, details matter, right? And for me, as a nonprofit leader, it's like, you gotta answer the question, be succinct, be to the point, and answer the question. So it was so enriching. And also too, for me as a nonprofit leader and working in the nonprofit world, just learning more about other nonprofits I didn't even know of. And just the respect that I have for so many nonprofits in our community. It's that was something that I thought I knew them, but I learned so much more about our nonprofit partners and people in the community, and as well as working alongside different people who, as I said early on, I would not have known if I was not a part of Impact Austin. So yeah, so it's a great opportunity for to be in a learning environment.
Thanks, Simone. Yeah, I totally agree. And I would love to be on your side of the table sometimes too. Deidre, I'm going to ask you the same question. Please share your perspectives as both a GRC member and a community partner. And might I add, Deidre was one of the women I worked with on GRC, and it was an awesome experience, she and Rachel. And anyways, Deidre, go ahead and share your experience with us.
Absolutely. Well, my GRC experience, I think, was great because it gave me kind of a window into the women who were serving on the committee. You know, there's been comments to the fact of, what do you need to know to be able to serve on the committee? And yes, everything is kind of gone through, what to look for in the application. So anybody who doesn't have that experience is kind of guided, step by step. But I think my experience, the things that I think I was impressed by the most were how much everybody on the committee cared, to really take the time to, read through everything, question what they had a question about, and really discuss amongst the other committee members. I thought was really impressive. I think I brought, some knowledge to the table being from the nonprofit world that may not have been, common knowledge amongst everybody, but for the most part, I think just really everybody taking the time to really consider each organization in a fair and as complete as possible manner, I thought was really impressive to me. I think as far as from a nonprofit perspective, I really learned a lot about our organization and how people react to our mission, and to like to Simone's point, she talked about trying to make it as succinct as possible, to be able to make it from the the inquiry stage, the LOI stage, into being invited to submit a full proposal. You have to answer the questions, tell exactly what you want to do with the grant, how you want to do it, and make it easily understood. And I think that makes it, makes you a stronger organization to be able to get that across in the most clear way possible. Yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Deirdre. And we love that pink wall.
Yay.
The Grants Committee is a team of Impact Austen volunteers who manage the process, from organizing and leading GRCs to supporting nonprofits through the application process and as community partners, which is what I'm looking forward to, plus everything in between, so technology, training, communications, marketing, and more. Melissa, as noted, you've done about 70 bazillion jobs within the Grants Committee in your tenure. Talk a little bit more about what it's been like and what you've gained from those experiences.
Sure. So I could not recommend more being on a grant review committee. If you're new to Impact Austen, if you're not new to Impact Austen, sign up for a grant review committee, give it a year, you'll be back. It is, here's the Hamilton geek in me, but it's the room where it happens, right? It's 20 women, 25 women who take 30, 40 applicants and go through a process over a period of 4 or 5 months and get it down to the 2 finalists that committee is recommending to be voted on by the membership. And it involves, reading applications. It involves doing deep dives where you do some independent research about the organizations and the people leading it. It involves the final 3 in your committee. You get to go to site visits and meet the people and see where they do the work. And it's a great experience, both as far as meeting other wonderful women and really getting to know the creative ideas that organizations are coming up with. And then once you do it once, you'll be back. And then once you do it twice, we'll be asking you if you want to lead a committee. And once you do that a couple of times, I, made Anne come be my co-chair on the, behind the scenes now. But it's one of those things where Impact Austen has a volunteer role for you, whatever your interest is and whatever the size of the time. My husband laughs at me because every year I say, well, I was on a committee. How much more work could it be to be a chair? Well, I was a chair. How much more could it be to be the grant review coordinator, where 2 of us oversee all of the committee? How much harder could it be to do this? And it is harder and it is more work. And so this year I actually took a little bit less time intensive role, but that's what's great about Impact Austen is if you have an interest and you're willing, they'll find a spot for you, and it can be the size that you want it to be. So like I said, start with the GRC and being a committee member. And some people stay there. I mean, we have committee members who have done that for 10 years. And I always threaten that I'm just going to go back and be a member of a committee again, because it is the best part. And whenever they need volunteers to, come help run a meeting or go to site visits, I'm always like, I miss it, I'll go. But start there. And then if you get a bug, just start asking questions and raise your hand to volunteer, and we'll find a spot for you.
Yes, you do. So many Impact Austen members join through relationships, the recommendation of a friend or colleague or a mom or a daughter. Let's go to Rachel and Deirdre. And Rachel, we'll start with you. What would you say to your best friend about joining Impact Austen and being part of the grants process?
What would I say to my best friend? So, Anne, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to answer this very literally. My best friend is 30 years old. Like me, she's a woman of color. Unlike me, she is Asian American. And historically, Impact Austin has not had the best inclusivity. But as Becky mentioned earlier, I think the organization is getting a lot better. We're really taking strides to be much more diverse, much more inclusive. And what I would tell my best friends is there is a place for you in Impact Austin. There is a place for me in Impact Austin. I feel like there's a place for me. I know there would be a place for her and for anyone else, no matter who they are, how old they are, what their background is, etc. And I would tell her too, your voice matters. Your vote also matters. So one thing that we haven't really dug into too much is that everyone gets a vote in Impact Austin, and it's one vote per member. And so you can, if you're a member and you decide to donate more to Impact Austin than the membership fee and membership dues, then you still just get one vote. Everyone just gets one vote. Now, if you're on a grant review committee, then you get one vote at the annual meeting, but you also get a say in which two nonprofits will ultimately go up in front of the Impact Austin membership and will ultimately get that grant. And so I would tell her, your voice matters, your vote matters, you matter. We don't just want, we need more perspectives. And we definitely have a spot for everyone.
I love that, Rachel. And I think those were really important things. So Deirdre, what would you say to your best friend about joining Impact Austin?
No, I think I would just add to what Rachel said, that I think not only the collective giving part of being a part of Impact Austin, but I think there's being part of the Grants Review Committee of Impact Austin really makes your membership, I think, more meaningful, because you do have that opportunity to learn about the organizations that are applying for a grant, to learn more about what's going on in your community, and get to work with some really great women who care what goes out into the community and what organizations, what they're doing and the great work. And I think that, I always feel like if I'm a member of an organization, you only get out of it what you put into it. And I think that's why it's so meaningful to be a part of a grants review committee, because you're getting much more out of, the participation and being a part of what's going on.
I agree. Thanks, Deirdre. So many members juggle their work, their family, community involvement, hobbies, faith, and more, like geriatric pets. I have 3, and they're quite time consuming. When they think about volunteering, it's often a question of trade-offs, giving up one thing they love for another. So Simone, we'll start with you. Can you talk a little bit about how you've made room for Impact Austin grant making in your life and why you're so grateful that you did, given the fact that you're also running a large nonprofit that's doing great work?
Well, one thing that really made it easy and possible was the schedule. Everything was scheduled in advance. We had the dates. We got the dates for the entire process. So I was able to look at the dates and see which group I could be in. And so that made life a lot easier so that I can say, yes, I'm going to commit to this and be able to do it. So schedule, calendar, everything is just laid out for you. And that's what I love about Impact Austin. They take a lot of that extra work out of you, from you. So you can make a decision easier. And I would say too, I get so much from learning about others and learning about different communities that was very gratifying. For me, one of the most treasured aspects about working on the grant committee was the interview process when we did the final, when we were working with the finalists. That to me was joyful because you get to listen to people and guide them as far as, sharing their presentation. And the site visits too was just remarkable. So for me, it's just so enriching on so many different levels that to me, that was totally worth it. And to know that whoever gets this, the impact it's going to make on that organization. That, to me, that's about everything for me.
Thanks so much, Simone. And I agree with you. Everybody does a wonderful job of telling you when, what, and where you need to do. So for those of us that have kiddos or a lot of commitments or professional careers, that we can manage our time and be there when we need to be. So Melissa, you've already spoken at length about it, but is there any best practices you can talk with about how you've made room for Impact Austen grant making? Like, have you given up sleeping? Or, I don't know.
I don't know what that word means, Anne. I joke because I was thinking about what my answer would be to what do you tell your best friend, right? How do you get them to join Impact Austen? And I think the one thing that I would always say is, you know me, you know how little time I have between work and taking this kid to soccer and that kid to volleyball and all of the things that go into life. But this is the thing I always make room for. And it's because this is the thing you look forward to, right? And you want, I always joke, I'm a lawyer to pay the bills, but if I could somehow pay the bills giving away money to the best organizations, I would be a grant review coordinator for a living, right? And this is the fun. I mean, this is what you enjoy doing. And I think there's a spot for everybody. Like Simone said, being on a grant review committee is laid out, and you'll know in the beginning it's these 4 Wednesdays or these 4 Tuesdays, and you can get it on your calendar. And then from there, just be honest about what role you want. Do you want a one-time project that'll help? Do you want a behind-the-scenes job that's only in February and March? I mean, you can make time to make a difference, and just be honest with the people about how much or how little you want to be involved, and we'll put you to work. I promise.
Yes, you always honor your promises too, I know. Okay, as we wrap up, in no particular order, we'll go ahead and start with Rachel again. I'm picking on her tonight. What word or phrase comes to mind to summarize Impact Austen grant making?
Meaningful. I think we all have so many opportunities to spend our time and money, and at least I know I really find Impact Austen to be very meaningful use of my time and money.
I love that. Thank you. How about you, Deidre?
Well, I would have to say organized. I just feel like the process is so organized and well done, the meeting dates ahead of time. Even, when we first met as a committee, they break down, how much time it might take to read, X amount of applications, so kind of give everybody a heads up, plan for this. And I think just kind of the instructions and the guidance is just very organized, which makes it easy for the grants review committee member to, carry out the responsibility of serving on the committee.
I love that one, Deirdre. Thank you. And Simone, what about you? What word or phrase characterizes?
I would say transformative. I would say yes, because I believe it transforms you into someone who wants to give, and you have such pride in knowing that you are a philanthropist and you're doing the work to make this happen. So vetting and doing everything possible. Yeah, it's transformative for you as an individual, as well as the organizations you're gonna grant funding to.
Yes, very much so. And Melissa, again, last but not least, what word or phrase would you use?
I think educational. I have learned so much about the needs of the community and the creative solutions that organizations are trying to use to try to solve some of those needs. It's been very eye-opening.
That is awesome. And the word that I would use, or phrase that I would use, I know I'm the moderator and it's not my opinions that count, but I would use the word grateful. And so for me, the opportunity to join something and to make a gift that's so well thought out and worked through, I'm just grateful that I've had the opportunity to do so. So with that, we're going to open it up to questions, and I believe that Christina and Nicole have done so. So I'm going to read a couple of these questions out. So the question is, how much of a time commitment does serving on a GRC require? If I work full time and have a busy life, is that possible? And Melissa, I think, Rachel, why don't you answer that one if you don't mind? How much of a time commitment was it?
I think it's become less of a time commitment over the years. So several years back when I joined my first GRC, I think we met for an hour less each, or an hour more each time, or maybe it was a longer duration. So I think the time commitment has scaled back a little bit. Anne, you would be able to tell us more about that. I will say though, I fit it into my schedule. Pre-COVID was very, very busy, and I found a way to fit it into my schedule. So I don't know. It was a big time commitment, but it's also doable if you want to do it.
Fair enough. And I think the point I might add just is, if you have a year where you don't have the time commitment, that's okay. We'll still take your money, and put it to good use. But it depends on the year, the time, if you've got small kiddos, if you've got trips. And so it's not something that's a long-term commitment. It's when and where you need to make that commitment. Does anyone else? Deirdre, do you want to talk about time commitment? How did what do you think your time commitment was?
I felt like it was much less than I had anticipated once I got in there. I feel like it was only a few hours a month. There were a couple meetings that were 2 hours long, but that was really the only time commitment for a few weeks. And I think it probably all in all was maybe 15 hours over several months, something like that.
Okay. And like we said, we plan really well. So I'm going to ask Becky Austen to join the conversation and answer this question, because I can't. But a question came in. I was at a conference and became quite interested in the concept that many large foundations are committed to, trust-based philanthropy. What is Impact Austin's point of view and practices, if any, on trust-based philanthropy?
All right, I'm glad to take this one. So there are a number of different organizations who are doing work in this area, and it's really about shifting the power dynamics that occur in grant making and in funding. Oftentimes and historically, the power sat with the funder. So the funder holds the money, the funder makes the decisions, the funder has the process, and those seeking funds have to fit, have to bend themselves into that process and don't have a whole lot of, equal power in that equation. Trust-based philanthropy is about shifting that power to be balanced between the fund maker and the fund taker. There are 6 key principles that come up in this work. First is around multi-year unrestricted giving. Second is doing the homework, so expecting the grant maker to do the research as much as the grant seeker. Third is around simplifying and streamlining paperwork. Fourth is around being transparent and responsive. Fifth is around soliciting and acting on feedback. And then finally, supporting beyond the check. I would say even before people talked about this as a thing, as trust-based philanthropy, many of these values were what Impact Austin was built on. And so acting on feedback, we are always listening and revising our processes based on member feedback and community feedback and nonprofit feedback. I can't remember a year I've been involved where we didn't, take all that feedback and think about ways that we could continue to adapt and improve our processes. Being transparent about our grant making processes and about our decision making, and especially because it's member driven, it's really easy to say there's no backroom decisions or politicking or anything going on here. Rachel said it best. It's each member has a vote, and everyone's showing up with their point of view, and everyone's being heard. I will say some of these things are newer. Unrestricted giving is uncomfortable for a funder. I see the nonprofit partners who were, nodding their heads because they know, it feels so much easier to fund a program, that you can get your head around and see the specific outcomes. But definitely, you know, the dynamics this year with COVID shifted our thinking around that. So I did talk about the fact that we'll give those 2 awards. That smaller award is fully unrestricted, and then the larger award, we increased to a 20% unrestricted part of that. So you can pretty much use those funds as you need to. And we've always had a notion of a 2-year grant, so you can pick either 1 or 2 years. You know, so that's beginning to think about what longer term funding looks like. Simplifying and streamlining, you know, our paperwork, our operations. When one of my peers said we've got 28, I think, questions on one of our grant applications. I mean, I know because I've you know, run that process and written the manuals, but I was still aghast. It's like, wow, that's a lot of questions. You know, so now we have 6 or 7. So, you know, I think there's just a lot of ways that we are learning about this and applying the principles now, and still have plenty to learn and plenty more work to do as we go forward.
I agree. So I'm going to throw another question at you, Becky, or anybody else on the panel who wants to answer, but this is a good question too. And boy, has it been relevant this year. Geez Louise. How is software technology, Zoom, Teams, Slack, Doodle, Poll, et cetera, used to make communications and organizing most efficient? And might I note that this thing went off pretty well tonight, so apparently we work technology pretty well. But does anyone want to comment? Maybe talk about Zengen, something like that?
Well, I'll talk about, so last year when COVID hit, we were doing what we had always done for the last 8 or 10 years, and we were meeting monthly in person, and we had site visits planned in person, and all of a sudden we went, we can't do this. We need to shift. And we had not until then used Zoom for meetings. We'd done things in person, and this was all new to us, and it went off without a hitch. I mean, we not only moved all of our GRCs. At the time we had 4 GRCs operating. About halfway through the grant review process, we moved them all online, and we sped up the process at the same time to try to get the money out as quickly as possible. We then voted online. We had our annual meeting online. I mean, I don't know how much of this will be kept for the future, but it was great. I mean, it ended up working out really well. And one benefit that has been seen of it is this year with the grant review committee that's going on right now, because they knew it was going to be online. It started after we've all been, you know, living this way. And we had members from much farther away, you know, Bastrop or Dripping Springs or Cedar Park or Georgetown, who might not have made it into town every, you know, couple of weeks for the meeting. So I think part of this will be explored in the future as well.
I think it's a great opportunity to make it easier for more people to access. Absolutely. One last question, and I think unless there's more that come our way, but and this kind of ties into what Becky was talking about earlier, but who or what organizations does the grant committees look to for best practices? Any comments from any of you there?
I can jump in a bit, and then anybody else feel free to add. You know, I said it even before, we're a listening and learning organization, and humility is a key value here. So we don't presume that we know everything and that we've got it all figured out. So we listen to our members all the time because they and we do the work of grant making and of Impact Austen. So, you know, member voices are really important. We do have strong relationships with other funders, the Women's Fund through the Austin Community Foundation, you know, the large funders, Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, St. David's Foundation, the smaller family foundations, that, you know, there's a community of funders in Austin that connect with each other, and through partners like Mission Capital, you know, are sharing best practices and understanding, you know, different ways of giving. And then folks like our executive director, Christina, and our board members are out on the road and engaging with national organizations that are doing work in women's philanthropy and in trust-based philanthropy. And so, you know, through those connections, we are actually hearing voices of many, many other women's giving organizations that have different ideas and different values, and comparing notes with them. So I'd say that's, you know, again, part of that learning culture, that we're always discovering ideas. And the hardest thing is figuring out, like, oh, we can't do it all this year, so which one do we pick?
It's a bit of a grand adventure, isn't it? So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Christina Gorginski, our executive director, and she's going to talk for a couple of minutes and share more information with you.
Thank Thank you so much, Anne, and thank you to all of our panelists. So yes, I'm Christina Canales-Gorczynski. I'm the Executive Director of Impact Austen, and I get to thank you for joining us for our Getting to Know Grants event as we continue to fundraise for support of Impact Austen's community partners, build philanthropic champions and our members and beyond, and to celebrate women's philanthropy and high impact grant making. So I thank you so much, Becky Austen, Anne Helmick-Lyon, Simone Talma Flowers, Rachel Brownlow Lund, Melissa Lorber, Deidre Anderson, for all you do for Impact Austen and beyond. And thank you so much to Impact Austen's office manager, Nicole Genovese, for her work to put this whole event together. As a famous African proverb says, when we go alone, we go fast. When we go together, we go far. So visit impactausten.org to learn more, and let's go the distance and make an impact together. And I'll turn it back over to Anne to wrap us up. Thank you so much.
So I don't know how I wrapped that up. You did a great job. But if you just have general questions about Impact Austen, you can just reach us at contact@impactausten.org. And again, thank you to everybody, to all of you. And I sat here and I don't know, I was touched by the couple of the things that you said. It still makes that much difference to me. Nicole, especially, thank you. But I want you guys to know that in December, when I sit at my kitchen table and write my checks, I feel really, really good about the check I write to Impact Austen. Because even if we're funding an organization that I didn't vote for, I'm 110% certain that that organization was vetted and passionately explored, and that that money is being put to amazing use. And that makes writing that check an awful lot of fun. So thank you, everybody. Stay safe, stay well, and we hope to see you online soon. Thanks again.